Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Governor Cuomo has said that both legalizing gay marriage and expanding rent regulations are a priority for his administration. But with the legislative session coming to a close, he has yet to convince lawmakers to come to an agreement on either issue. So what does the governor need to do to get these bills over the top? Here to discuss those questions and much more, the four members of our Consultants Corner. We've got Republicans Kellyanne Conway and Robert Hornak, and Democrats Patrick Jenkins and Dan Gerstein. Welcome to all of you. Let's go right to the grades. Let's just start right there. How do you rate the governor's handling of gay marriage? He was, it looked like he was pushing it, and they got votes that nobody expected him to get, or at least it was a surprise in some individual cases. But they've been stuck at this apparently one vote to go for a couple of days now, and there's hour after hour of caucusing, lots of stuff going on. We've showed some of the rallying going on up there. How do you rank how the governor's doing on this?
I rank the governor's handling of gay marriage as a B, not necessarily the issue and him raising it now. And the reason I give him a B is he said that, he basically has put it out there as his big, the Rubicon upon that he will pass as governor, but at the same time, if he doesn't have the votes, he's going to pull it. So he's very cunning. He is making this about religious exemptions now, which is not really what it is about. And so he's tried to divert the attention away from the actual issue. And I think his handling of it...
I'm sorry, what is the actual issue?
The actual issue is whether or not marriage in the state of New York should be between one man and one woman or some other configuration. A man and a man, a woman and a woman. And that's the issue. And the issue as presented to voters in 30 states has always passed when it has been presented that way, including in some very liberal states that always elect Democrats for president. So if you get it through legislation, if you get the governor to sort of shepherd it through, it's a very different situation. But I think he's handled it very well in that it would have been easy for him to say, I'm not going to tackle this now. We have this deficit, we have so much going on here in New York. He's got tremendous political capital, he has very high approval ratings. He's using that capital on something that could hurt his chances to be president one day, frankly.
Interesting. Patrick Jenkins, your grade.
I gave the governor an A, and I think that what's important to note is that he's shown extreme leadership on the issue, and I think that by putting it out there, by being forceful behind it, but not only that, but continuing to work the issue is a credit to him. And I think that it's a tough issue. It's an issue that has been on the table for a long time, and to see the progress that we've made in this year, in this year alone, has been tremendous. So I give him an A for the effort, and I think that it may ultimately be a success. So what he's done is shown the leadership that we haven't seen on the issue, as well as the work behind the scenes on the issue that we haven't seen in a long time.
Robert Hornak.
I gave him a B-. He should have foreseen a lot of these problems. Other states where they have tried this, there are precedents for a lot of these personal exemptions and things that the Republicans are negotiating for. I think this issue actually did sneak up on him very quickly as something that was really in play. I think that they thought they were going to put this up, and it wasn't going to be put up for a vote, and then it was just going to go away. And now he's actually in the middle of dealing with having to find a way to resolve this.
You think he succeeded more than he expected to?
I think he did.
Oh, yes.
Interesting. Dan.
I agree with a lot with Patrick and Kellyanne, and I think the governor's handled it about as well as you could have. But I give him a B just in large part because he hasn't gotten over the finish line, and I don't know how you can give someone an A when they actually haven't delivered and got the legislation passed. But he got farther than I think anyone imagined this year, and I agree that with Kellyanne in terms of pure political management of the issue. He's been very skillful. He's used his political capital. I think the timing of it was very smart, and sort of because the great mistake he would have made, it's the same mistake President Obama made on healthcare. The country was talking about jobs, and he was looking like he was pushing his own agenda. If Governor Cuomo had done marriage equality before dealing with the budget, dealing with ethics reform, he would have risked a lot of backlash and a quick diminishment of his capital.
Let me say this about the Republican senators who are still on the fence. They have to wonder whether they want to be the deciding vote, because let's just say, just for argument's sake, 4 of them end up voting for gay marriage. All 4 of them will be called the deciding vote, the person who pushed gay marriage. And there will be a couple of Democrats thrown in that mix too, if they've changed their votes, which some are expected to do, and if they are in districts which really don't support gay marriage. And so you'll have 6, 7 people from both sides of the aisle who will be known as the deciding vote. We've seen that play out in New York. We've seen it play out nationally many times, where being the deciding vote on such a big issue, such a change, in the law could come back and hurt you. But if there are some people willing to risk their seats over it, that's fine. But it's amazing to me how far this issue has come so quickly, because I think when we talked about it here several months ago, everybody to a person agreed that it wouldn't pass this session. You wouldn't even get close.
What if it doesn't come up at all? I mean, Dean Skelos doesn't have to call a vote.
Right. Well, that means that the governor didn't have the votes and he pulled it. I think that's how it will look, because that's what has been said publicly, that if he doesn't have the votes, he will pull it. He won't let it go to a vote unless he thinks it will pass.
Isn't it unfortunate, though, that we don't have initiative and referendum in the state?
Right, absolutely.
Because wouldn't
Let
this
the
be
people
the
decide.
ideal issue to put up for a vote of the people?
But we polled it in New York, and that is the one thing that everybody agrees on. They are telling, by 87-8, they're telling their legislators, let us decide. And by the way, it's strong on both sides of the issue. People who are for gay marriage, people who are against it, they all say the same thing, which is just let us decide.
But one thing I got to take issue with in Kellyanne is somehow this would be a political liability for Governor Cuomo if he runs for president. The tide is turning on this nationally, and you see it in New York. The fact that this is, we're even having this debate. He will come. I bet you he will.
Going to come out.
He's evolving. He will announce
evolving.
whether he does it before the presidential election.
Yes, I read
or
yesterday's
after.
New York Times too.
I don't know, but he will.
Aren't you insulted that he's evolving?
No. I think that's a mark of an intelligent, mature
flies
politician.
Oh, are people who are already evolved on gay marriage not intelligent?
No, what I'm saying is for someone to change their position as a matter of listening to people is in no way a lack of leadership. It's the exact opposite. Unlike some politicians who change their position from on a life or death issue purely to court votes, which we've seen from Mitt Romney, and which will be the death of his presidential campaign, I predict.
Right.
Interesting. Let's take on a new topic. The 9th Congressional District, as of midnight, I guess midnight tomorrow, will have no member of Congress. Anthony Weiner is stepping down. What happens next? Is it a seat that's going to be sliced and diced and eliminated? Is it going to be a seat that it makes sense for both parties to fight for? What do you see happening?
Republicans are definitely going to fight for the seat. You spoke to the Queens and Brooklyn chairman earlier. They're putting together a screening committee. They're going to interview probably a dozen or more potential candidates when all is said and done. Their goal is to find the strongest, best candidate to run. This is a district that's been trending towards the Republican Party over the last decade. There's been a large influx of Russian Jews into the district who are ultra-conservative, have been shaking things up over there. And if the Republicans can win this seat, it's hard to say that it won't get redistricted out next year, but this certainly puts it in play.
Well, look, you live in Queens. You advise Republican candidates. Would you advise a client to go and try and make a run for this seat?
Absolutely.
Yes,
I think
you
it's
don't
a
have to
great
stand for
opportunity.
re-election. That's great. You have been a member of Congress, never have to stand for re-election.
Especially if you're a young up-and-coming
Who are
guy
not
who
for
wants to make
Congress.
your name, right? There's no downside to running and winning and then getting redistricted. I mean, you didn't lose.
Well, not having a job is a
But at the same time,
It's a noble way to fall on your sword.
Yeah.
And in most cases, you can't look at these things as like going to have a job. You're going to serve the people, and if you put in your time, and if it goes away, it goes away. But at least I think there's a lot of people out there who would be willing to put themselves on the line and go and serve the people down in Washington.
The other side of gaming out what happens in the wake of the resignation is what happens in the 2013 race for mayor. Who gets helped by Anthony Weiner's demise?
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody else. I never thought he was as strong a candidate as everybody said, for lots of reasons. I think we've talked about that here, but everybody's helped because he's a prodigious fundraiser. He would have had some key endorsements, and he was looked upon as somebody who was waiting his turn, which is very important in the hierarchy.
I would say nominally it helps Chris Quinn the most because she's the most mainstream candidate. She has the most citywide appeal. She will naturally step into that role as not necessarily the front runner, but at least the leader of the pack. I tend to think, though, it creates an opening for another outer borough candidate like a Marty Markowitz. Because Anthony had a little bit of a claim on the white ethnic outer borough vote, the people who are really frustrated with Mayor Bloomberg, but not necessarily want to back a very liberal candidate. So I would say that potentially slot is still open and it will be helped by Anthony leaving the race.
And I think Bill Thompson still has a high level of stature considering that he came so close to beating Mayor Bloomberg. He's already an announced candidate. So I think it helps him. It also helps not only Quinn, but I also think it helps Scott Stringer, who is considering a run as well. So I think Anthony out helps a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I think Billy Thompson, who was the top candidate basically running against Mayor Bloomberg, it helps elevate him a little bit more. And I think that what we're finding with Anthony Weiner is that the connections weren't there so great for him in the first place, which led to him having to resign.
Well, let me ask you this, Patrick. The field right now is only Bill Thompson. He's the only one on the Democratic side who has declared. When should others be planning to throw their hat in the ring? I mean, understanding we're very early, we're 2 years out.
It's extremely early. I think the timing for Bill Thompson, considering he ran previously, is different than everyone else. I think you have to look actually almost in the middle of next year as we clear out the Democratic primary for president, or the Democratic time for president, and the convention and all, and look after that, maybe in July, August of next year.
I would just add, I think it's less important when they formally announce and more important when they start projecting leadership. I think people are starting to, since it is a fluid field, no one's really pulled away and be seen as the front runner. There's an opening for someone to step up and really start leading on some issues, put some ideas out there, especially when it comes to the jobs and the economy, to distinguish themselves.
Very interesting.
I partially agree with what Dan said earlier. This does open up a tremendous opportunity for an outer borough candidate. After 12 years of Mayor Bloomberg, we're not so sure we're going to elect another Manhattanite. But Democratic primaries always tend to be jockeying between different constituencies and different ethnicities. This creates a tremendous void for a potential Jewish candidate to rise up and become the #1 candidate to represent the Jewish vote.
Very interesting. Question for the Republicans. John Huntsman declaring for president tomorrow, right here in the New York area at Liberty State Park in New Jersey. Are you excited about him as a candidate?
I welcome all comers because I like a competitive process. It's very difficult for me to picture him as the nominee. I think what's fascinating, though, is that very few people associate him with the religion he shares with Mitt Romney, whereas everybody associates Mitt Romney with Mormonism. It's quite fascinating the way people look at folks through a different lens. But it's not just the, quote, base and the primary and caucus voters who I think will not look very kindly on some of the things that Ambassador Huntsman has said in some of his positions. I actually think it goes beyond that because Republicans feel like Obama's beatable, and they want the person to win the primary who takes Obama on frontally and unapologetically. And I feel like, not unlike Tim Pawlenty in the debate a week ago, John Huntsman may spend the first 22 seconds of a 60-second debate response against Obama talking about what a great father and husband he seems to be and how remarkable it was to see him elected a lifetime. Check, check, we all agree. But answer the question, hit the guy on his record, and people wonder if he will be able to do that to his former boss.
Interesting. We were kicking it around the last time a cabinet member ran against a sitting president. The best I could do was John Nance Garner running against FDR back in the 40s. If you've got better information, please let us know.
How'd that go?
You're right. How'd that work out? Didn't work out so well. Highly unusual, but these are unusual times. Yes. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be talking with you again real soon. Time for a break. I'm going to be back in a minute with some viewer mail, and then we'll preview tomorrow night's program. Stay with us.